So are you prepared enough for a cyber attack on your business? There's a couple different approaches to preventing damage from a cyber attack. One is to not have a cyber attack in the first place. That comes from prevention. Another is to minimize the effect of a cyber attack, and that comes from internal controls. And then the third layer of that is having insurance, cyber liability insurance. Whether you decide to get insurance or not, it's probably a good idea to spend some efforts and resources on the first two. Prevention and mitigation are actually very easy to do and can be relatively inexpensive. What you don't want to do is just rely solely on your IT department. Your IT department is great for production, programming, observation of technical resources, but the risk prevention element is more of an executive management type of activity. As an example, if you have a company where you have a facilities manager, maybe you have a manufacturing plant or a commercial building with office space, you probably have a facilities manager that oversees the building, but they're probably not the one that considers and prevents injuries or damage like fires or slip and fall or work comp claims. They may be part of the solution, but they're not the person or department which are primarily tasked with risk prevention. The same holds through with IT or technical resources within your company. They're going to know about the risks, but you don't want to have them be the primary source of prevention. That should come from executive management. And so on the risk prevention side, there's a few steps that you can do. And whether or not you decide to get cyber liability insurance or not, a good insurance agent or broker can give you some techniques, checklists, best practices that you can put into place whether you have insurance or not. You can contact our office, you can contact your current broker to have them describe to you what are the best practices for preventing losses. The reason this is important is because it's an underestimated risk and it's an underutilized risk. Here's an article from Property and Casualty from within the last month. The report shows many small businesses aren't addressing the threat they face because it's an invisible threat. You don't see it every day. You don't know that the hackers are out there, that the prospective losses and damages are out there. You can't see it. It's invisible. It's not something you can measure, but it is big. So whether you decide to get an insurance policy or not, here's the article on your screen. We'll put a link in the description. Only 8% of businesses with 50 employees have a dedicated budget for cybersecurity. 40% have no budget at all. Even 14% of bigger companies don't have a budget. So what that means is most companies don't spend any money preventing this, and the hackers know it. That article is a public article. Even before it came out, the cyber attackers know that most businesses have no defense against an attack. So if you just spend very limited time and attention on your cyber prevention, you will be the least likely candidate for an attack. There's an old saying in scuba diving: you don't have to swim faster than a shark, you just have to swim faster than the other divers, which is the same with cybersecurity. If you're just nominally better than most of the other companies, the hackers are going to leave you alone because they're going to take the easy pickings, the easy targets, the low-hanging fruit. As we talked about before, they have very detailed management schemes that run their business just like you do. They have a sales department, operations department, people that look for the best return on their investment, and if you have basic prevention in place, you're not going to be on their list. So what are those preventions? Again, you can contact your insurance broker, our office. We can send you a checklist that you can put into place whether you're our client or not. And those go kind of like this. First, you want to get a census of all of the devices that are in your company that access the internet. They access outside networks, everything from laptops to computers to servers, even things like security cameras. Internet of Things devices. Sometimes your smoke alarm, your fire alarm might access the internet. Your employee time clock might access the internet. It's easy enough to get that census. Now here's where your IT person can help you out. They can give you a census of all your devices and what their activity is and what their level of access is. Then what you can do is look at all the devices which can access your critical systems. Your critical systems are things like your banks, your payroll, your intellectual property, if you have a manufacturing plant, your CNC machines. If you're a hospital, it's all your diagnostics. If you have any kind of facilities, it's your facilities management, things like water pumps. Anything critical, you want to find what devices connect to those critical infrastructure. Even if they're not connected to the internet, you want to know what's connected as far as devices. And then you can get a route map of all the connections between those two layers. The devices that connect to the internet, which one's connected to your critical systems. And then what you can do is you can create a pathway diode. And that's a virtual term. It's not an actual device or an electronic crystal or chip. It's a logic tree that only passes information in one direction. So if something is on the internet, it's not passing information from the internet to your control system, just the other way. And that's something easy enough to do. The next thing you can do is have a regular update protocol and regimen for those devices. Every device will have version updates, version 2.0, 2.5, and patches that go into cover known vulnerabilities. As hackers get into systems, those pathways and those hacking points become well known in the security industry. Your insurance broker may know about this. Your IT department may know about this. But the repairs of those are not going to be known unless you patch those systems. Having a regular update doesn't have to be all the devices every day. Maybe it goes through a rotation. If you have 100 devices, maybe it's 3 a day. And at the end of a month, they're all updated. Maybe you do 10 a day and you have it done in 2 weeks. Who knows? But the bottom line is you have some type of plan for doing those updates, because updates are 90% of your protection. Usually these vulnerabilities and these access points and breach capabilities happen because a new threat, a new breach method has been developed by the hackers, and immediately the hardware, the software producers all come up with a fix for it. And if you put those fixes in place, you can limit your liability and your damages. Then, once you have all that done, you can go through a personnel census and find out who are all the people in your organization who has access to different parts of your system. For example, your salespeople probably want to be able to access customer data. Your accounting department probably wants to access financial data. Maybe your operations department needs to access the CNC machine system. But you don't want to have somebody have too much access. Your salespeople probably don't need access to the CNC department or the finance department. And it's not that you don't trust them. Maybe they're not going to do anything wrong on purpose. But if they somehow make a mistake and they click the wrong button and they erase something, that's just as bad as a hacker doing it on purpose. Plus, if somebody's on the road and uses a Wi-Fi and that Wi-Fi is breached, and somebody gets into your salesperson's laptop from some hotel somewhere, and then they get into your system through your VPN, that's a problem. And if all they can do is get your customer data, you can limit your liability to that one area. You don't get them into your finances. Plus, you can do an automatic tripwire, meaning that if you have a pattern of activity that's defined for each user, let's say one user regularly goes to customer service, or they go to client contact information, or they go to pricing information. That's their normal pattern of activity. If one user all of a sudden starts having a different pattern of activity, maybe a different IP address, maybe a different time of day, who's going to be going into your system at 3 a.m? Maybe it's a recognition of them going into a different area, or at least trying to. Even if your sales department personnel are limited to the client information, if they attempt to get into your bookkeeping, that should be a red flag, and that should be something that hits a tripwire and creates a notice. Maybe that's where your IT person comes into play. They create that tripwire, and they also the ones who receive the notice. You don't need to receive every notice, but you want somebody to see that there was an attempt made that doesn't seem right. That's another best practice. And you can put all these things in place over time. You don't have to drop everything and do it in a day or two. You can do 1 or 2 of these steps every day. Have your IT person, your administrative person, maybe your director of operations spend an hour or so every couple days putting one of these things in place. Next thing you know, in a week or two, it's all done. You don't have to drop everything and shut down your business to get these done. You can implement them as you go. What you'll also find is while you do that process, you will also discover changes to your technical resources that will make your business run better. You'll find better ways to get salespeople to log in. If your operations person looks at the sales process for getting technical contact, they may find, wait a minute, why are we making our salesperson log in 3 times? Why don't we just give them a simpler access? Why don't we simplify the customer database? Why don't we delete some of these old records that are slowing down the system? So this auditing process, even though it takes a little bit of time by all the stakeholders, will not only make you more secure, but also improve the efficiency of the underlying business. Look, every business nowadays is technical, one way or another. No business is not an internet business or not a technical business. We all rely on it, even if it's for cloud devices, cloud records, software updates. So we all have to be aware of the reliance on technology. And if everybody's involved, then it's not just one person's shoulders to do all of this. The last thing to do is to have this subject be part of regular conversations. You can have a regular meeting about cyber protection, cyber defense. It could be a scheduled meeting for that subject once a week for 15, 20 minutes. It doesn't have to be a long time. It could be simple as, hey, don't forget, if you're outside the office, use your VPN. Don't forget to put 2-factor authentication on your phone. Don't forget. It could just be one subject each time. And you might have to repeat them because people forget things. Or it could be an addendum to an existing meeting. We don't recommend that because meetings as it is tend to drag on and nobody really thinks a meeting was too short. Most of the time you think it's too long to begin with. So adding something on is just going to make it less effective for the primary subject, and more likely that the add-on is going to make the meeting even more negative than it would be. So we recommend another short little meeting, and it doesn't have to be everybody all at once. Maybe if you have 50 people in your organization, you have 3 meetings times 15 people, or 2 times 25, and just repeat the same thing. The other reason to do this is if you log and document all of these meetings and what's covered, and even a little bullet point 1-page sheet that you email to all the attendees afterwards. Now what you have is, first of all, a 2-part, 2-channel communication with the stakeholders. You have the verbal, visual meeting, and you have a PDF file, a document that's sent to them. People seeing information twice are more likely to retain and utilize the information. And if you log this schedule of activity for 2, 3 weeks, few months, when you go to purchase cyber liability insurance, one of the things you're going to find is your agent, broker, or insurer is going to ask you, do you have any cyber defense plan? Do you have regular instruction, training on this? And you can say, yep, here's our book. It could be a virtual book. It could be a printed book, 3-ring binder with all these in it, the dates and times. I have to tell you, If you go to a cyber liability insurance provider this day and age, and you show them that you have been doing this even before you needed to, it will dramatically increase your availability of markets, of companies who will write your business, and it will dramatically lower your cost. If this is the first time you've heard of this and the first time you start doing it, when your insurance agent says, hey, do you have regular meetings? And you say, no. And they tell you, well, you're going to have to. That might not be well received by the insurance company. So those are some best practices, even separate from insurance. If you decide you want to get insurance, there's methods for that. But regardless of you getting insurance or not, those are best practices you can put in place that will make your business more resilient and also one of an elite group. 8% of companies do this. You can be one of the elite privileged companies that are ahead of the curve, have less likelihood of loss and less likelihood of being down for a couple days and losing customers, and more likely to be able to get more advantageous insurance quotations and coverage for your business.